Hello, Year 13. Uh, Welcome to this programming tutorial. This tutorial builds on the previous two tasks that we've been looking at and works towards your Ed2 coursework prototype section. So in order to complete this tutorial, to begin this tutorial, you should have completed the multi-windows application. And in fact, I suggest this approach. This approach probably grows the best for larger projects in Ed2. I'll get into a little bit of this later and explain this in different videos. But obviously, you've completed this and your SQL tutorial task. It's time to develop these. What we're going to do now is we're going to combine the two. We're going to have our SQL database in the background and hopefully sit an abstract tkinter front end on top of it. So we left it here with you completing your project, hopefully. And next I'm going to look at creating a database class. The reason for this, even though we only have one database, I can create a class that will have multiple objects that will connect to that. And as long as I close the connection each time, the database will work. And it will save me writing lots and lots of code to manipulate the database. I write methods and I can call them throughout a complex Ed2 project. So you can see in this tutorial, I've given a basic plan. This is basic at the moment because I don't really know what I want this to do by the end of the project. So I'm going to talk you through and explain this class. And then in a separate video, I will explain how we will put a tkinter front end into it. And then on the final video, we will look at the 3-view and buttons. So let's just look at the database class and try and explain it. So you can see class is called database. The only parameter that it requires is the name of the database. If I pass in this name, it will try and create it. If it's already created, it will just ignore it. And I'm starting to create methods that I can use throughout my project to interrogate the database. And just for the sake of the future tutorials, I'll be using this simple database that I started in the previous projects of students who are going to order their leavers hoodies. An A-level project would typically have 5 to 7 tables. So we'll begin with 3. Again, this is a prototype to develop the skills, and then you'll start to see it. This is not the only way to do this project. There are lots of different approaches. I'm just attempting one that I'm familiar with. Find probably straightforward. So there's a database class. Be cautious with this, injecting SQL, just a very abstract function for doing any SQL command. I'll probably remove this by the end of the project, just really for testing. But my CRUD operations to be able to create, retrieve, update, insert. There's my method to insert data. There's a method to retrieve, fetch all method, very similar to a previous project. There's delete. And a new method that I've added is to get the field names. This will allow me to pass in any table and it will return an array or a list with their names. Therefore, I can create the tkinter interface and don't forget to close the connection. So, how does that tie in with my tkinter interface? In my page 1 menu, sorry, let's just pause it here. Right, so I have used the container approach and I've got a class. Again, this comes from this tutorial in pythonprogramming.net. I've altered again to suit my project, but I've got a container class, and in this class, I've got a frame that's acting as my container. It's going to hold all my window objects. I iterate through, I've got a dictionary, a blank dictionary, and I'm just iterating through and instantiating each window object, and it'll be stored in the dictionary. You can see I'm creating a frame for each of the iterators. I'm passing in the container and the itself. And I've got page 1, very basic. This is Rathmore Grammar School. So when I run this, that's it. This is the first page that's been passed in the containers, and it will link to student details. So let's go on to my page 2 and look at how I've changed this. Here is the first thing to note: a connection to my database. I've imported my database class and I'm now connecting to it. Created an object called MyDB, uses the database class as created, passing the test. And the first thing that I've done is I created an array called student fields, and I used the get fields method from my database class, passing the student table. So in this array, it's going to hold the names from student statement. So that would be student ID, phone name, surname, etc. So I've got these stored in an array. That will allow me to iterate through that and to create widgets. Now, let's go back. The basic tkinter interface, as we know, will be mainly made up of labels and entry widgets. That's what we're going to deal with now. We'll look at buttons in another video. So I've created a class called a basic widget class. My thinking behind this is, look, if I group the label, the entry widget, and the variable associated with it in one widget, I can call this many times throughout my project. If you think about it, if you have 7 tables with 10 entries, there's 70 times 3, 210 widgets you'll be using on a MailAppy project. And I can call this basic widget instead of writing out 5 or 6 lines of code. It will just be one line. And the only thing I'm passing into it is something parameter called master. That's the window that I want this basic widget to appear in, what text I want in the label, what row and what column I want to position. Here the parameters are being named, and this is being instantiated instances of tkinter labels, variables, and entry widgets. So we're back up to this. So iterate through my field and I create a widget, which is an object from the basic widgets. It's going to be placed in itself, which is in this window. It's passing in the text, which is F. And in self.dot, it's going to be placed in self.row and self.column plus 1. Note that I've added these attributes to my class, the row and column, to help me position it. And I put my button, my home button, back underneath it, and I quitted that. So, how does that play out? When I run the main, you can see student details. It has went into the database, connected to the database, grabbed these field names, use the basic widget to populate this. I can go home. Now make sure, as I said before, that we close our database. I've now finished with interrogating the database. So in here, after the iteration, I should be calling my DB dot, hopefully I can remember the name of this, dot, not get fields, dot close, I call it. And that will close the database. Somewhere else during the project, I can use that. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. That will be the first part of your project, moving forward, creating the database class, and then a tkinter interface to manipulate it. I've tried to detail this in the tutorial. Just through it. Try your best. Any problems, post to the stream, and hopefully myself or someone in the class can answer. Good luck.